Abstract. Count Sebastian Vance is a man who has everything: wealth, titles, and a cynicism forged in magical warfare. When a careless bet with a friend sends him hunting for a mysterious horsewoman in the Reserve Thicket, he expects a brief diversion. Instead, he finds Emilia Green, a destitute noblewoman fighting a war on two fronts, against the dark, ancient creatures creeping from the abyss, and against her own insufferable relatives who have invaded her crumbling home. Bound by a secret past and a dangerous magic she barely understands, Emilia must protect those she loves, even if it means holding a pitchfork against the most powerful man in the province. But as shadows lengthen and old wounds reopen, the line between hunter and prey, and between hatred and love, begins to blur. The early autumn sun filtered through the canopy of the Reserve Thicket, dappling the mossy ground in shades of amber and gold, though Count Sebastian Vance found little beauty in the afternoon. To him, the forest was merely a collection of timber waiting to be harvested, or a hiding place for things that ought to remain dead. He rode with a practiced, lethargic ease, his black stallion, Onyx, picking its way over the gnarled roots. Beside him, riding a mare that seemed far too spirited for its rider's skill, was Marquis Felix, a man whose primary contributions to society were gossip and an inflated bar tab. "You look as though you've swallowed a lemon whole, Sebastian," Felix chirped, adjusting his silk cravat.
"Smile, man.
"The air is fresh, the birds are singing, and we are not currently being disemboweled by shadow monsters. I call that a victory." "The air smells of rot," Sebastian corrected dryly, scanning the tree line. "And if you don't lower your voice, you might invite the very things you're so glad to avoid." Suddenly, the rhythmic thud of hooves broke the stillness. It wasn't the heavy, militaristic gait of a patrol horse, but something lighter, faster. Sebastian reined in Onyx, his hand instinctively drifting toward the sword at his hip. From the dense undergrowth to their left, a streak of copper and chestnut burst forth. It was a woman on a magnificent red horse. She wore no riding habit, but a simple, worn dress that had been hiked up for mobility, revealing leather boots that had seen better days. Her hair was a wild tangle of auburn curls, blazing like fire against the green backdrop of the woods. She didn't look at the two aristocrats. Her focus was entirely on the path ahead. With a shift of her weight and a whispered command, she guided her mount over a fallen log with a grace that made the jump look like flight. She was there, a vivid explosion of life and motion, and then she was gone, vanishing into the deep woods like a forest nymph dissolving into mist. Felix let out a low whistle. "By the saints,
Did you see that?"
that wasn't a woman, Sebastian. That was a phantom." "It was a trespasser," Sebastian muttered, though his gaze lingered on the spot where she had disappeared. He had seen many riders in the capital, highly trained daughters of generals and dukes, yet none sat in the saddle with such intuitive unity with the beast. "A beautiful trespasser," Felix corrected, a mischievous glint entering his eyes. He trotted his mare closer to the Count. "I sense a challenge, my friend. You pride yourself on knowing every soul in your domain, from the highest lord to the lowest pig farmer. Yet you do not know her. I have better things to do than chase peasants through the mud." "Scared?" Felix goaded. "I'll make it interesting. 2 weeks. If you can find that fiery spirit and bring her to the autumn ball, or at least tell me her name and station, I will concede." "Concede what?" "My prize stallion, Whirlwind. The one you've been eyeing for your breeding program." Sebastian paused. Whirlwind was indeed a magnificent creature, possessing the speed and stamina his own stables lacked. The Count looked back toward the dark tunnel of trees. The mystery of the woman was mildly irritating, but the prize was substantial. "And if I fail?" Sebastian asked, though he didn't believe he would. "Then you give me that case of vintage elven wine you've been hoarding in your cellar. The one from the pre-war era." Sebastian extended a gloved hand. "Prepare to walk home, Felix. You're losing a horse." Miles away, the object of their wager, Emilia Green, slowed her beloved horse, Phantom, to a trot as the dense trees gave way to the overgrown driveway of Old Elm. The estate, once the jewel of the valley, now looked like a dying giant. The roof sagged under the weight of moss, the stone facade was cracked, and the famous elm tree in the center of the courtyard, though still alive, loomed over the house like a gnarled guardian protecting a corpse. Emilia dismounted, patting Phantom's sweaty neck. "Good boy. We outran the wind today," she whispered, her voice raspy from the ride. She led him to the stables, which were in better repair than the house solely because Emilia prioritized the horses over her own comfort. Inside the drafty kitchen, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of drying herbs, sage, thyme, and the bitter tang of wormwood. Her grandmother, Agatha, was hunched over a mortar and pestle, grinding dried roots with a vigor that belied her 80 years. In the corner sat Nika, Emilia's younger sister. The 16-year-old was staring out the window, her fingers deftly weaving a basket. Nika hadn't spoken a word since the night their parents died, a tragedy that had locked her voice away in a box of trauma. "You're late," Agatha grunted without looking up. "The broth is thin, and the wood bin is empty. Did you find the valerian root?" "I did," Emilia said, placing a satchel on the scarred wooden table. "And I ran into some nobles in the woods. Had to take the long way around to avoid questions." "Nobles," Agatha spat, finally turning. Her eyes were milky with cataracts, yet they seemed to see more than most. "Vultures in silk. They smell the rot on this house, and come to pick the bones." "We're managing, grandmother," Emilia said, trying to inject cheer into her voice as she went to hug Nika. The girl leaned into her sister, offering a small, silent smile. "Managing." Agatha cackled. "We are selling weeds to cure gout while the roof leaks onto our heads." And now, the true storm comes. As if summoned by her words, a cacophony of carriage wheels and shouting erupted from the courtyard. The heavy oak front doors, which usually stuck, were thrown open with a violence that sent dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. Emilia rushed to the hallway, wiping her hands on her apron. Standing in the foyer, surrounded by a mountain of luggage, stood her Uncle Rudolph, Aunt Hortense, and their brood. They looked like peacocks stranded in a coal mine, loud, colorful, and utterly out of place. "Good heavens!" Aunt Hortense shrieked, clutching a handkerchief to her nose. "Rudolph, surely this is the wrong address. This is a ruin, not a manor. It smells of damp dog and poverty." "Emilia," Uncle Rudolph boomed, his face red from the exertion of existing. He stepped forward, ignoring Emilia's outstretched hand. "We have arrived. The city is unbearable in this season. Plagues, politics, dreadfully boring. We decided to grace the ancestral home with our presence." Behind them slunk Cousin Arthur, a young man with wandering eyes and a weak chin, and Cousin Bella, who was currently trying to scrape mud off her satin shoe with a look of existential horror. Hovering near the back was Stella, a woman introduced as a friend of the family, though her sharp eyes appraised the furniture like an auctioneer. "Uncle," Emilia stammered. We weren't expecting you. We have no rooms prepared." "Nonsense." Hortense waved her hand dismissively. "You and your sister can move to the servants' annex. It's the brick building out back, is it not? That will free up the master suites for us." "The annex?" Emilia felt a flush of anger. "The roof there has collapsed in 2 places. It's full of mold. Then you best get to patching it," Arthur sneered, stepping closer to Emilia, his gaze dropping to her bodice in a way that made her skin crawl. "Unless you want to share a room with me, dear cousin?" Emilia stepped back, her hand tightening into a fist. "This is our home. You cannot just—" "Actually, my dear," Uncle Rudolph interjected, pulling a document from his coat, "as the male heir and executor of your late father's poorly managed estate, I have every right. In fact, it is only out of my boundless charity that you are allowed to remain here at all." It was a lie. Emilia knew it was a lie. They had stolen her inheritance years ago through legal chicanery, but she had no money for lawyers and no power to fight them. By nightfall, the occupation was complete. Emilia, Nika, and Agatha were exiled to the damp, stone-walled annex that smelled of mildew and old potatoes. The main house was ablaze with candles, wasting wax Emilia had carefully saved, and the sounds of demanding shouts for dinner echoed across the yard. "I will poison them," Agatha muttered, sitting on a crate and wrapping a shawl tighter around herself. Hemlock in the tea. Simple. Efficient. "No, grandmother," Emilia sighed, laying out bedrolls on the driest patch of floor. "We just need to survive them. They'll get bored and leave." "They're not guests, Emilia," Agatha whispered, her voice dropping to a low, vibrating hum. "They are parasites. And you don't wait for parasites to leave. You burn them out." The next evening, the guests demanded a séance. It was meant to be a parlor game to amuse the bored Bella and the cynical Stella. They dragged Agatha into the main drawing room, mocking her reputation as a village wise woman. "Tell us our fortunes, old hag." Arthur laughed, swirling a glass of Emilia's best brandy. "Will I marry a princess?" Agatha sat at the head of the table. The candlelight flickered, casting deep shadows into the wrinkles of her face. She didn't look at Arthur. She looked through him. "You wish to know the future?" Agatha asked, her voice sounding like dry leaves scraping over stone. "The spirits are restless tonight.
They see you.
They see your greed." "Oh, stop the theatrics," Hortense scoffed. "Just tell me when I will receive an invitation to the royal palace." Agatha's head snapped toward Hortense. "You will receive attention, certainly. I see slime. A trail of silver slime covering your finest silks. A great invasion of the lowest creatures."
Bella giggled.
"Slugs? How dreadful." "And you," Agatha turned to Stella. "I see a cage. Iron bars. Cold stone. A house owned by the state." Stella paled slightly, but regained her composure. "Ridiculous." "And for the young master?" Agatha's eyes locked onto Arthur. He stopped laughing. "I see a failure. A limpness. When you desire to rise, you shall fall. When you seek to conquer, you shall be laughed at. The spirits declare a permanent softness." Arthur turned beet red, slamming his glass down. "That's enough. Get this witch out of here." Though they threw her out, the air in the room remained heavy and cold, and the shadows seemed to stretch just a little too far. The torment escalated 2 days later. Arthur, stung by the grandmother's curse and fueled by rejection, cornered Emilia near the stables. He tried to grab her waist, his breath reeking of spirits. When Emilia shoved him into a pile of hay, his ego shattered. "You play hard to get," he snarled, brushing straw from his coat. "You think you're better than me? You have nothing. That beast of yours, Phantom, he eats more oats than he's worth." "Don't you dare go near him," Emilia warned, grabbing a pitchfork. "I'm the master here," Arthur shouted. "I've already sent word to the butcher in the village. He pays good coin for horse meat. By tomorrow morning, your nag will be glue." Panic, cold and sharp, pierced Emilia's chest. She knew Arthur was petty enough to do it. That night, under the cover of a moonless sky, Emilia muffled Phantom's hooves with burlap sacks. Nika watched the perimeter, her eyes wide with fear, signaling when the coast was clear. Emilia led the horse through the woods, tears streaming down her face, until they reached the small forge at the edge of the valley. Thomas, the blacksmith and her childhood friend, opened the door, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He was a giant of a man with a heart as soft as the iron he worked was hard. He asked, seeing the terror in her eyes. "What's wrong?" "They're going to kill him, Thomas. Arthur, he's going to sell Phantom for meat. Please. You have to hide him." Thomas didn't ask questions. He took the reins, his large hand gently covering hers. "I'll put him in the back paddock, behind the heavy brush. No one comes back there. He's safe, I promise." While Emilia fought her domestic war, Count Sebastian Vance was fighting a battle for his life. It began as a dull ache in his shoulder, the sight of a jagged scar left by a shadow blade during the Wasteland Wars. By the time he returned to Vance Castle after the bet with Felix, the ache had turned into a fire. His vision blurred, swimming with dark spots that whispered in a language he couldn't understand. He collapsed in the library, knocking over a bust of his grandfather. Alfred, his butler, a man of indeterminate age and infinite competence, found him. The local physicians came and went, shaking their heads, bleeding him with leeches and prescribing mercury, but the fever only climbed. The wound on his shoulder glowed with a sickly purple light, the necrotic magic eating away at his vitality. "The doctors are useless," Alfred declared on the third night, looking down at his thrashing master. "They treat the body, not the curse." Alfred knew the rumors about the women of Old Elm. He knew that while the aristocracy mocked Agatha and her granddaughter, the villagers whispered that Emilia Green had hands that could knit bone and calm the wildest fevers. Desperate, Alfred took the carriage himself. Emilia was surprised to see the Count's crest on the carriage rattling into her yard at midnight, but when she saw the desperate look on the butler's face, she didn't hesitate. She grabbed her satchel of herbs, and Agatha insisted on coming, grumbling about weak-blooded men. They were smuggled into the castle through the servants' entrance. When Emilia saw Sebastian, he was pale as death, sweat matting his dark hair to his forehead. He thrashed on the silk sheets, murmuring names of dead soldiers. "Hold him down," Agatha commanded Alfred. "Emilia, the light." Emilia hesitated. She had never used her gift in front of strangers. It wasn't magic in the way the wizards of the capital used it, flashy and geometric. It was a warmth in her gut, a vibration in her fingertips. It was the energy she felt when she touched the earth or calmed a horse. "Do it, girl," Agatha snapped, "or he dies tonight." Emilia placed her hands over the glowing wound. She closed her eyes and reached for that internal sun. Pull the darkness out. Fill the void with light. She visualized the purple corruption as a tangle of thorns and imagined her energy as water, softening, untangling, washing it away. A soft, golden luminescence seeped from her palms. The room temperature seemed to rise. Sebastian gasped, his back arching off the bed. The purple glow in his shoulder fought back, biting at Emilia's hands like icy teeth, but she pushed harder, pouring every ounce of her compassion and strength into him. With a final, shuddering breath, Sebastian collapsed back onto the pillows. The purple light vanished, leaving only a clean, pink scar. Emilia stumbled back, exhausted, catching herself on the bedpost. Sebastian's eyes fluttered open. For a moment his vision was clear. He saw a face hovering above him, auburn curls backlit by the candle, eyes the color of forest moss, filled with concern. He felt a lingering warmth on his skin, a sensation of absolute safety he hadn't felt since childhood. "You," he rasped. "The rider." Then darkness took him again, this time in a natural, healing sleep. The next morning, Sebastian woke feeling weak but alive. The pain was gone. He sat up, demanding answers. "Who is she?" he asked Alfred, who was pouring tea with maddening calmness. "The woman with the red hair. She healed me." Alfred didn't blink. "My lord, you have been in a high fever for 3 days. You were hallucinating." Dr. Pimble applied a very aggressive regimen of river leeches. "That is what saved you." "Leeches?" Sebastian touched his shoulder. It felt like sunlight. "Fever dreams are vivid."
"Sir."
"Now, drink your broth. You have a wager to win, do you not?" Back at Old Elm, the atmosphere had shifted from oppressive to chaotic. Agatha's curses were beginning to ripen. It started with Baroness von Spitz. The haughty woman had come to visit Aunt Hortense, eager to gossip. During tea, she shrieked that her diamond brooch was missing. The accusation was immediate. Everyone looked at the servants, Emilia and Nika. "Search them," Stella demanded, her eyes gleaming with malice. Emilia stood tall. "We have not touched your jewelry. But if you wish to search our quarters, be my guest. Mind the rats." Nothing was found, but the seed of suspicion was planted. The Baroness left in a huff, vowing to ruin the family's reputation. Then the absurdity began. Bella decided to take a stroll in the garden to impress a passing carriage. Out of nowhere, a flock of geese, usually docile creatures kept by the neighbors, descended upon her. They didn't bite, but they honked and flapped with targeted aggression, chasing the screaming girl into the muddy duck pond. She emerged covered in green slime, looking exactly as Agatha had predicted. Slugs. Slime. Agatha cackled from the window of the annex. Meanwhile, Arthur had managed to secure a date with a wealthy merchant's daughter in the village. By all accounts, things were going well until they sat down for dinner. According to the village gossip mill, Arthur suddenly found himself unable to perform basic functions. He spilled wine on his lap, tripped over his own feet, and when he tried to speak seductively, his voice cracked into a prepubescent squeak. He returned to Old Elm humiliated, blaming bad wine. But Emilia saw the fear in his eyes when he looked at Agatha. Sebastian, however, was not easily deterred. Despite Alfred's gaslighting, he couldn't shake the memory of the golden light and the woman's face. He began to scour the countryside, ostensibly looking for the mystery rider for the bet, but in reality, searching for his savior. He showed a sketch of the woman to the local baker. "Oh, never seen her, my lord," the baker lied, wiping floury hands. He knew exactly who it was, Miss Emilia, who had given his wife herbs for her cough when they couldn't afford a doctor. He asked the blacksmith, Thomas. "A redhead?" Thomas scratched his beard, looking the Count in the eye. "Lots of redheads in the world. Can't say I know one who rides like a demon." The people of the valley loved Emilia. She was their heart, their healer. They sensed the Count's interest, and, fearing he meant her harm or scandal, they formed a wall of silence. But the idyllic games of hide-and-seek were cut short by blood. Farmers began to report livestock torn apart. Not eaten, shredded. Sebastian, fully recovered and restless, rode out to inspect a carcass. He knelt in the muddy pasture, examining the deep, parallel gouges in the side of a prize bull. "Wolves?" Felix asked, holding a perfumed handkerchief to his nose. "No wolf has claws this wide," Sebastian said grimly. He touched the wound. It sizzled slightly, a faint residue of necrotic energy. The same energy that had festered in his shoulder. "These are void beasts. Scavengers from the abyss. They've broken through the barrier somewhere." "Void beasts? Here." Felix dropped his handkerchief. "That's a military matter." "It's a matter for anyone with a sword," Sebastian said, standing up. "We organize a hunt. Tonight. We cannot let this thing roam near the villages." A great hunt was declared. Every able-bodied man with a weapon joined the Count's retinue. They scoured the woods with torches and hounds. Emilia heard the horns blowing. She was in the barn at Old Elm, the only structure she still had unrestricted access to, checking on a stray cat she fed. The tension in the air was palpable. Nico was hiding under the blankets in the annex, terrified by the baying of the dogs. Suddenly, the barn door creaked. Emilia grabbed her pitchfork, her heart hammering. "Who's there?" A massive shadow limped into the moonlight filtering through the slats. It was a wolf, but of monstrous proportions, black as pitch, with eyes that burned like coals. But it was hurt. A jagged spear wound in its flank oozed dark blood. It collapsed onto the hay, wheezing. Emilia raised the weapon, ready to strike. This was the monster. The beast killing the cattle. But then the wolf looked at her. In those burning eyes, she didn't see mindless hunger. She saw pain. She saw intelligence. And she felt a recognition. A soul she knew. "You're not a monster, are you?" she whispered, lowering the fork slightly. Outside, the shouting grew louder. "The trail leads here. To the barn." Sebastian's voice rang out, clear and authoritative. "Open up." The heavy pounding on the barn door shook dust from the rafters. Emilia made a split-second decision. She threw a heavy tarp over the shivering wolf and kicked loose hay over it. Then, she grabbed the pitchfork and stood in front of the mound, facing the door just as it burst open. Count Sebastian Vance stood there, sword drawn, flanked by torch-bearing men. He looked like an avenging angel, dark and terrifying. "Step aside, miss," Sebastian commanded, squinting into the gloom. He didn't immediately recognize her in the shadows and the oversized coat she wore. We tracked the beast to this structure. There is no beast here, Emilia said, her voice shaking but firm. Only me. Sebastian stepped closer, the torchlight illuminating her face. He froze. The auburn hair. The eyes. It was her. The woman from the woods. The woman from his fever dream. You, he breathed, lowering his sword slightly. It is you. Get out of my barn, Emilia hissed, raising the pitchfork. You have no right to trespass. My dear, Sebastian said, regaining his composure, a monster entered this building. I saw it. Step aside, or I will be forced to remove you for your own safety. I said, there is no one here. Check the hay, a hunter shouted from behind Sebastian. Sebastian moved to step past her. Emilia jabbed the tines of the fork toward his chest. I will run you through, my lord. Do not test me. The tension stretched, tight as a bowstring. Sebastian looked at the pitchfork, then at her fierce, terrified eyes. He admired her courage, even as he feared for her life. Check the hay, Sebastian ordered his men, but he kept his eyes on Emilia, ready to disarm her. Two men moved toward the mound behind Emilia. She braced herself, gathering the light magic in her palms, ready to unleash a blast that would expose her secret to the world. The hay shifted. Emilia held her breath. Please run. Please. But the wolf didn't spring out. Instead, a human hand, pushed the tarp aside. By the stars, a groggy voice mumbled. Can a man not sleep off a bottle of whiskey in peace? The hunters froze. Sebastian frowned. From beneath the hay, rubbing a very human, very unshaven face, rose Oliver, the village forester. He smelled of alcohol and confusion. He looked at the hunters, then at Emilia, then at Sebastian. What's the commotion? Oliver slurred, scratching his chest. Is it morning already? Emilia stared. The giant black wolf was gone. In its place stood Oliver, a man she had known for years, looking completely baffled and entirely human. Sebastian lowered his sword, looking from Oliver to Emilia. The trail had led here. He was sure of it. But the magic of the void was tricky, and a drunk forester was a disappointing reality. My apologies, Sebastian said, though his eyes narrowed with suspicion as he looked at Oliver. We were hunting a bear. No bears here, Oliver said with a lopsided grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Just us chickens. Sebastian sheathed his sword. He looked at Emilia one last time. I have found you, he said softly, for her ears only. The wager is won, but I suspect the game is just beginning. He turned and signaled his men to leave. As the torches faded into the night, Emilia dropped the pitchfork, her knees shaking. She looked at Oliver. His eyes flashed, just for a second, with the amber glow of the wolf. That was close, Oliver whispered, his voice suddenly sober and sharp. Too close. The revelation in the barn hung heavy in the air, a secret shared in silence. But there was no time to dwell on it. As the hunters dispersed, Alfred emerged from the shadows of the manor, his usually impassive face etched with urgency. He didn't ask permission. He simply acted. My lord, Alfred said, intercepting Sebastian before he could mount Onyx. The excursion has taxed you more than you realize. Your aura is fracturing. Sebastian looked down at his hands. They were trembling, the veins turning a dark, bruised violet. The necrotic energy of the void was not merely a physical wound. It was a parasite of the soul. I can ride, Sebastian gritted out, though his vision swayed. You cannot, Alfred countered, his voice dropping an octave, resonating with a power that made the horses pin their ears. We go to the Iron Peaks. Now. Without waiting for a protest, Alfred signaled to a carriage that had materialized from the mist, a black coach with no crest, drawn by horses that breathed smoke. He then turned to the women. Agatha, you know what must be done. Keep the girl safe. As the carriage thundered away with the Count, Agatha ushered Emilia and Nika back into the cold annex. She bolted the door and lit a bundle of sage, the smoke curling around the damp room.
Sit, Agatha commanded.
It is time you knew why the darkness hunts you and why you can heal it. Emilia sat on the lumpy mattress, pulling Nika close. Grandmother, Oliver turned into a wolf. The Count is dying of magic. What is happening? Agatha sat opposite them, her milky eyes suddenly sharp and clear. You think you are Emilia and Nika Green, impoverished nobles of the valley. And you are. But you are also something else. She leaned forward. Do you dream of metal birds? Of towers of glass that scrape the sky? Of lights that do not burn with oil? Emilia's breath hitched. She did have those dreams. Vivid, terrifyingly real nightmares of a world of noise and speed, of a life where she was a medical student named Emma, and Nika was her little sister Nicole, who loved to draw. She had always thought them to be madness brought on by the trauma of her parents' death. You are souls from another world, Agatha whispered. From a time far ahead, when the real Emilia and Nika lay dying of fever years ago, the barrier between worlds thinned. Your spirits were pulled across the void to fill the empty vessels. You brought with you the energy of your world, a world without magic, which makes your souls dense, like stars. That is your light. That is why you can burn away the corruption of the void. You are anomalies. Emilia stared at her hands. The medical knowledge she had instinctively used to set bones? The modern ideas about sanitation she fought the village doctors on? It wasn't intuition. It was memory. High in the Iron Peaks, in a sanctuary carved from living rock, Sebastian was fighting for his sanity. The sanctuary belonged to the Keepers, an ancient order to which Alfred belonged, a lineage of warrior monks sworn to guard the boundaries of reality. To cleanse the void poison, Sebastian had to undergo the trials of salt and iron. He was stripped to the waist, shivering in the biting wind of a high-altitude plateau, surrounded by a circle of silent figures in gray cloaks. Among them stood Oliver. The forester was no longer slouching or drunk. He stood tall, radiating a predatory power. The void feeds on your fear, Count, Oliver growled, stepping into the circle. To expel it, you must master your own darkness. And to ally with my pack against the beasts, you must prove you are not just a man of silk and orders. I am listening, Sebastian said, his teeth chattering, his skin pale. No swords, Oliver said, cracking his knuckles. Flesh and bone. Beat me, and the pack fights with you. Lose, and the void consumes you. It was a brutal, ugly fight. Sebastian was a trained fencer, elegant and precise. Oliver was a brawler, fueled by the strength of the wolf. They traded blows that cracked ribs and split lips. Sebastian was knocked down, again and again, tasting mud and blood. But every time he hit the ground, the image of Emilia, standing in the barn door with a pitchfork, fearless, flashed in his mind. She is fighting a war with no weapons, he thought. I cannot fall here. With a roar of defiance, Sebastian surged up, dodging a haymaker and driving a precise, punishing blow to Oliver's solar plexus, following it with a sweep that sent the werewolf crashing to the stone. Sebastian stood over him, heaving, the violet veins on his arms fading to normal blue. He offered a hand to Oliver. Oliver took it, grinning through bloody teeth. Not bad for a nobleman. The final trial took place in the Cave of Mirrors. Sebastian had to walk through a hallucinogenic mist. He saw his greatest fears manifest, his castle burning, his title stripped. He walked past them, unmoved. Then the mist shifted. He saw Emilia, lying cold and still on a slab, her light extinguished. Panic, raw and absolute, seized him. He fell to his knees, reaching for her. No, he whispered. Take everything else. Not her. Then the vision changed. He saw a future, a simple life. Him and Emilia, sitting under the great elm, watching children play. He felt a peace he had never known. That is your truth, Alfred's voice echoed in the cave. You fight not for glory, but for her. Sebastian emerged from the cave at dawn, the poison gone, his eyes burning with a new, terrifying clarity. He had an alliance with the wolves. He had his health. And he knew exactly what he wanted. 2 weeks later, society returned to its frivolous rhythms. The event of the season was the charity ball for Lucy's birthday, held at the opulent town hall. Emilia attended only because Lucy insisted. She wore a dress reworked from her mother's old gown, emerald green velvet that brought out the fire in her hair. She felt like an imposter, especially when she saw the capital crowd sneering at her. She and her friends, Lucy and Marie, had a plan. The magpie thief had been striking at every major event. Tonight they were ready. The ballroom went silent when Count Sebastian Vance entered. He looked devastating in black formal wear, his gaze scanning the room like a hawk. When his eyes locked on Emilia, the air between them crackled. Emilia, remembering Aunt Hortense's threat, "Stay away from him, or I will have Nika committed to an asylum," tried to flee toward the kitchens. In her haste, her hem caught on a decorative suit of armor. She tugged, panicked, just as Sebastian appeared at her side. "Running away again, Miss Green?" His voice was low, intimate. He knelt, untangling her dress with gentle, gloved hands. "I have duties," she breathless. "Your only duty tonight is to save a dance for me," he said, standing up. The intensity in his eyes made her knees weak. Nearby, chaos erupted. Cousin Bella, attempting to flee from a toad that had mysteriously appeared in her reticule, tripped and fell backward into the decorative indoor fountain. She splashed about, screeching, covered in algae. Sebastian gallantly hauled her out, dripping wet, but he didn't even look at her. His eyes remained fixed on Emilia. The romantic tension was shattered by a venomous intervention. Chloe, a socialite with sharp features and sharper claws, cornered Emilia near the punch bowl. "I see you making eyes at the Count," Chloe hissed. "Don't aim so high, darling. And stay away from the forge. Thomas is mine. If I see you near him again, I'll ensure your little herb business burns to the ground." Emilia was about to retort when Marquis Felix, swaying significantly, clamped a hand on her shoulder. "Ah, the elusive forest nymph." Felix slurred, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Sebastian certainly has an eye for horseflesh. You know about the bet, don't you, sweet thing?" Emilia froze. "What bet?" "The wager." Felix laughed, spilling punch. "Sebastian bet me he could hunt you down. The prize is my stallion, Whirlwind."
He didn't want you, my dear.
"He wanted the horse. You were just the fox in the hunt." The world seemed to tilt. Emilia looked across the room at Sebastian, who was making his way toward her. The tenderness in his eyes now looked like the satisfaction of a hunter claiming a trophy. He had played her. The connection, the healing, the barn, it was all a game to win a horse. Tears of humiliation stung her eyes. She turned and ran, ignoring Sebastian's confused call. But the night was not over. Suddenly, the ballroom lights were extinguished. A scream rang out. "My necklace. It's gone." "Lights," someone shouted. When the gas lamps flared back to life, the room gasped. Standing near the exit was Stella, the friend of the family. Her hands were glowing with a bright, neon blue luminescence, the result of the magical powder Marie had dusted on the decoy necklace. "It's her," Lucy shouted, brandishing a frying pan she had inexplicably smuggled into the ball. Stella's facade crumbled. She was revealed as the Magpie, a notorious con artist. As the guards dragged her away, she screamed curses at the meddling country bumpkins. The victory over the thief was short-lived. The next morning, Emilia, Nika, and their friends traveled to the market town of Brixton to meet Marie's fiancé, Pierre, who had arrived from the capital. But when the carriage door opened, Pierre did not step out. He stumbled out, his skin gray, his eyes entirely black. "The gate is open," Pierre croaked, his voice a legion of whispers. From the cobblestones of the market square, the earth erupted. Giant, hairy legs burst from the sewers. Void weavers, spiders the size of carriages, scuttled into the light, shrieking. Panic consumed the town. One of the monsters lunged for Nika. Decades of silence shattered. "Emilia!" Nika screamed, a sound of pure, raw power. The scream didn't just break the silence, it was a summons. From the surrounding hills, a howl answered. Dozens of gray shapes poured into the square, led by a massive black wolf, Oliver. The alliance was active, but the spiders were too many. They spun webs of shadow that extinguished hope. Emilia! Sebastian's voice cut through the chaos. He rode Onyx into the square, sword drawn, glowing with runes. Use the light. Emilia looked at the chaos. She looked at Nika, cowering. She remembered Agatha's words. You are a star.
She didn't pray. She didn't chant.
She remembered the sun over a skyline she had left behind. She pushed her hands forward, screaming her defiance. A shockwave of blinding, white light erupted from her. It wasn't soft healing energy, it was a solar flare. The shadow webs disintegrated. The spiders shrieked as the light burned their carapaces. Sebastian fought back-to-back with Oliver, sword and claw moving in deadly synchronization. Lucy, showing surprising combat aptitude, bashed a smaller spider with her cast-iron skillet. In the center of the mayhem, Pierre convulsed, the void entity inside him trying to kill its host. Hold him, Emilia yelled to Oliver. The wolf pinned the man down. Emilia placed her hands on Pierre's chest. This time, she didn't just pull the poison out, she blasted the entity with pure rejection. You do not belong here. A black smoke screamed out of Pierre's mouth and dissolved in the sunlight. Pierre gasped, returning to himself. The remaining spiders, blinded and leaderless, scuttled back into the dark depths. In the aftermath, amidst the ruins of market stalls, Sebastian found Emilia sitting on a crate, shaking from exhaustion. He didn't care about the onlookers. He scooped her up into his arms. Put me down, she mumbled weakly. The bet, the horse. Damn the horse, Sebastian growled, carrying her toward the inn. Felix is a drunk and a liar. I made the bet before I knew you. I won the bet the day I found you. But I lost my heart the moment you saved me. In the inn room, ignoring the scandalized whispers of the innkeeper, the Count of the province sat by the bed and hand-fed broth to the herbalist, wiping her chin with his fine linen handkerchief. The final battle was legal. Sebastian's lawyers, terrifying men with briefcases made of dragon leather, descended upon Old Elm. They tore up the floorboards in Uncle Rudolph's room and found the true will of Emilia's father. Rudolph, faced with the prospect of the salt mines, wept and signed everything back to Emilia. The guests were evicted. Aunt Hortense, however, was not done. The summer solstice ball was the victory lap. Old Elm was restored, the moss cleared, the chandeliers sparkling. Sebastian and Emilia opened the dance. The chemistry between them was so potent that the dowagers fanned themselves vigorously. I love you, Sebastian said, spinning her. I love your courage, your stubbornness, and your terrible taste in relatives. Emilia laughed, feeling truly happy for the first time in years. I love you too, Sebastian. She reached for a glass of lemonade from a passing tray. She took a long sip. The world went black. She collapsed into Sebastian's arms. Poison! Agatha shrieked from the sidelines. Pandemonium ensued. Sebastian's roar of rage shook the glass in the windows. Doctors rushed in. But it was Agatha who took charge, forcing a vile mixture of charcoal and rare roots down Emilia's throat. She's fading, Nika cried, holding her sister's hand. It was Chloe, of all people, who pointed a shaking finger at Aunt Hortense, who was trying to sneak out the side door. I saw her. She poured a vial into the glass. She said, if I can't have the house, no one will. Hortense was tackled by the guards. As they dragged her away, she laughed maniacally, fully descending into madness. For hours, Emilia hovered between worlds. Sebastian sat by her side, holding her hand, pouring his own strength into her, begging her 21st-century soul not to leave this vessel. At dawn, she squeezed his hand. Epilogue. The scandal of the poisoning cleared the air like a thunderstorm. The toxic relatives were gone, prison, asylum, or exile. Old Elm breathed again. 3 months later, the valley hosted the grand steeplechase. The favorite was Whirlwind, ridden by a professional jockey. But at the starting line, a red horse named Phantom appeared, ridden by a woman in green silks. They ran like the wind. Phantom, fueled by love and good oats, flew over the jumps. They crossed the finish line a nose ahead of Whirlwind. Emilia slid off the horse, muddy, sweaty, and triumphant. Sebastian was there to catch her. He didn't hand her a trophy. He knelt in the mud, ruining his best breeches. "Emilia Green," he said, holding out a ring that held a stone as bright as her magic. "Will you make me the luckiest man in 2 worlds? Will you marry me?" "Yes," she breathless, pulling him up to kiss him. "But I'm keeping the horse." I would expect nothing less. They were married under the great elm in the garden. As they exchanged vows, the ancient, dying tree shuddered. Golden sap flowed through its veins, and for the first time in a century, it burst into bloom, showering the couple in petals of living gold.